Back in January of 2001, I went down to Florida with my family while my father was working there. We didn't want to stay in a hotel because we had just bought a camper, so we decided to go camping. We stayed at the Hillsborough River State Park. One day, I took my bike out around 2 p.m. The camp had a few trails to ride on, so I decided to take one. As I was riding my bike, I stopped, looked over the ledge at a few alligators that I had spotted. I heard a rustling in the trees and thought maybe it was a gator, so I got steady on my bike and got ready to take off. As I was looking around, though, I noticed a tall, dark brown hairy figure just standing there looking at me. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, so I looked harder at it, and it took off running. I would also like to take a note that it was running on 2 feet, not 4. I rode my bike back to my camper as fast as I could, and elaborately told my mother and my sister that I had just seen a Bigfoot. They both claimed I was crazy, told me it was a black bear, because the camp guide told us not to leave food out. They had some of them in the area, and so black bear were very common. But I'm telling you, I am most certain that this was not a bear, because this thing stood up at least 7.5 feet tall and ran upwards on 2 feet. Bears can't do that. I know what I saw, and ever since then, I've been fascinated with this creature. I know for sure that it's out there. A follow-up investigation report was done by Kathy Betts. I had the chance to speak to JS on the phone, and he had these details to add. In January 2001, 16-year-old JS was visiting Florida with his family. They were camped at the Hillsborough River State Park between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on a sunny day with a temperature at about 65 degrees. JS decides to ride his bike up a trail that parallels the Hillsborough River. About a mile or so up the trail, JS noticed a place that he recognized from a previous canoe trip, so he stopped to see if there were still some alligators there that he had spotted earlier. He says this: "I was looking down a steep embankment towards the river when I heard something rustling some bushes to my right. I thought it might be an alligator, but when I looked, I saw this big thing standing there in the bushes, just 5 feet away from me. It was frozen, just looking at me while I looked at it. Then, it took off into the bushes. It was big." JS stated that he had about 10 seconds to observe it before it ran away. I think it freaked out, and that's why it ran. When I spotted it, it was sort of standing there in the bushes, frozen, like it was wondering if I would notice it. It didn't seem like it wanted to hurt me. I think I scared it as much as it scared me. After the creature ran off, JS stated that he got back onto his bike and pedaled faster than I've ever pedaled before. It took me until halfway back to camp to really realize that I had just seen a Bigfoot. Then, I began thinking, what if it's chasing me and steps out of the woods to clothesline me? But it never did. Deep down inside, I knew that it did not want to hurt me, but I was pretty scared by then. When I got back, I told my mom and sister that I had seen a Bigfoot. They explained to me that I probably saw a bear, actually. But it wasn't a bear, because bears don't run on 2 feet. I know it was a Bigfoot. JS stated that he saw the upper half of the creature, from the chest up. It was about 6 feet tall, and this thing stood about 1.5 feet taller than I was, so about 7.5 feet. Its shoulders were incredibly broad, about 3 feet across. I didn't notice any muscle definition because the hair was so matted, but it must have been pretty muscular. I mean, those shoulders were huge. JS didn't notice any hands, and the arms were kept at its sides. It didn't pump its arms like we run. They sort of just swung. It was covered with dark brown hair, that appeared very dirty and matted. And when it ran, JS did not observe any movement of its hair. It was definitely hair, not fur, but it was all matted and dirty, and didn't move much while it was running. Maybe it had been swimming in the river. Maybe that's why it looked so matted and dirty. Even the face was really dark. I couldn't tell what was hair or what was skin, because the color of its whole face was so dark. The eyes were also very dark. JS compared them to a dog's eyes when there are no whites showing. It had a smashed-in looking nose, compared it to being half human, half ape. The mouth and lips were wide and dark. There were no teeth seen. No ears were also seen. The head was elongated and oval-shaped. It was sort of pointed at the top, but not a sharp point. JS could also not determine a gender, and there was no odor present. It didn't make any sounds when it ran away, except for the breaking of limbs. JS also told me that he wished there was somebody else there with him when he had a sighting. Then, they would have believed me. I found his story to be very credible and believable. He was sincere, forthright, and did not attempt to embellish any details through expression or story. The sighting took place in the Hillsborough State Park, which is a 16,000-acre watershed that borders about another 10,000 acres of other wilderness and protected areas. It is part of an established wildlife corridor that extends from South Florida all the way to North Florida. Rich in wildlife, the terrain topography consists of swamps, pinelands, hardwood forests, prairies, and grasslands, as well as the Hillsborough River and its many tributaries. It's an ideal Bigfoot sanctuary. I, a female lady, was driving on a clear day on I-75 in the afternoon on a spring day from Sarasota to Tampa, going north 65 to 70 miles an hour on the far right lane. This was also back in 2012. This would also be on the east side of I-75. I had to take an exam in Tampa the next day, so I can tell you the exact date that I was traveling. My window was slightly open on the passenger's side, just to let in fresh air. I was driving on the far right side of the highway, in a very heavily tropical wooded area, when I saw what I first thought was a man, walking fast, about 50 feet away from the highway, in like a grassy meadow, with thick brush or tropical woods behind him. As I got closer, I saw that it was not a man, but a creature that looked like a man, but with approximately 3-inch long brown hair covering its or his entire body, from head to toe. When I was about parallel to this thing, it quickly went into the brush and wooded area, then vanished. It looked like tall, thick brush or woods. The creature appeared to be a male, around, I'm guessing, 6 to 7 feet tall. His or its body was very, very thick. Thick chest, thick legs, and very wide, thick shoulders. I could see the brown body hair as it turned its whole body all at once, bent its head down, and went into the brush. It was going north, the same direction as I, and walked quickly, with wide steps, with knees bent, before it turned into the brush. As I drove off, I couldn't get over what I'd saw. It happened in about 30 seconds' time. My car smelt like rotten eggs, sulfur, or just a strange, awful odor for about 10 minutes after. I was not afraid. It did not look scary at all, just very strange. It happened so fast and without warning. My car window was slightly open on the passenger's side to let air in because, well, it was a nice day out. But like I said, after the sighting, that terrible odor lingered. It was something bad, and it took a little bit of time for it to go away. I have not heard any other incidents except the woman who sent in photos of an ape-like creature known as the Mayaka ape. The creature I saw that day did not look anything like those photos. What I saw looked more human-like, with a thick body, covered in brown hair. It did not look like an ape, but it did have a very terrible smell. Also, this was between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Clear, beautiful sunny day, about 75 degrees. There was a follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator David Becara. I spoke with the witness by phone, and she seemed credible and sincere. Her sighting happened on her way to Tampa on a clear spring day just back in 2012. It was a nice cool day, by Florida standards, so she had her passenger side window cracked to let in fresh air. In an area near Little Manatee River State Park, she can't be sure as it was a long stretch of road, she noticed what she first thought was a man walking quickly, just 30 to 50 feet from the shoulder, heading north away from her. It was just a few feet from the woodline. As she neared the figure, she also noticed that it was covered in brown hair from head to toe. It was walking with long, purposeful strides, head and knees bent. The hair was 3 inches long, and definitely brown. She continued to describe it as much more man-like than ape-like. It had a round head like a man, and the arm length was normal, not long and down to the knees, but it was definitely covered in hair. As she came up next to it, it veered off towards the woodline, walked into the thickets, and disappeared, heading northbound. The witness never saw its face. She said that the thickets looked too dense for any man to just walk into, even for this large animal. She then noticed a very strong odor of rotten eggs / sulfur in the car, and had to roll the windows down for at least 10 minutes before it finally dissipated. She never felt any fear as she was in the car, and it never gave a reason to fear it. I was leaving St. Petersburg with the intentions of hitchhiking to Asheville, North Carolina. I had a friend drop me off at the I-75 North exit around 11 p.m. There was a lot of construction going on. Since it was getting late, I decided to camp for the night. I walked to the bridge that crosses the nearby river. I was planning on sleeping under the bridge, so I walked down underneath. I got myself somewhat comfortable. Then, I heard a couple of noises to the left of me, coming from the southbound bridge. I just played it off as a possum, or maybe a raccoon. Then, I heard it again. So, I decided to move closer to the river and hang my hammock in between 2 trees. I was texting people, then called my friend and talked to her, until about 2:30. Then we got off the phone since it was about to die. I went to sleep pretty quickly afterwards, but not for long. I wake up to a noise down by the river to my left. It was this weird cough grunt. I can't really explain it. I can't even mimic the sound, but I only heard it once. 10 to 15 minutes goes by and I hear another sound. This time, it's a low whistle from my right, next to the tree line. It lasts for 5 or 6 seconds, so I continue to lay there in silence. Another 10 to 15 minutes goes by and I start hearing rocks being thrown at me. This happened 5 or 6 times, every couple of minutes or so, followed by more silence. Not sure how long it lasted, but it was followed by the loudest crash I have ever heard in my life. I thought the tree I had tied my hammock to cracked. I nearly fell out. It sounded like thunder, gunshot, dynamite going off in my face. After that, I made up my mind to leave. I quickly packed up my hammock, headed back up the hill, crossing the bridge, and I caught a quick whiff of a skunk. Well, a skunk-like smell, I should say, and I could even feel a set of eyes on me. After that, I just decided that I would catch a bus back to North Carolina. There was a follow-up investigation done by R. Monteith. This witness originally called in his report and left a voicemail message. I was able to call him back, interview him, and had him report his encounter via the website. The witness was hitchhiking from St. Petersburg, Florida, to North Carolina. A friend had given him a ride to a location and dropped him off at approximately 11 p.m. Having nothing but a backpack and hammock, he walks further up I-75 and finds a location under a bridge, thinking he would just stay there for the night. It was now after 2 a.m., and while speaking on his phone, he heard a very low whistle. He thought it unusual to hear a bird at that time of night. He even attempted to recreate the sound to me, but concluded it was much lower in tone than he could possibly imitate. He did hear other noises, thinking they were raccoons, moved to the other side of the bridge, set up his hammock, and went to sleep. He awoke to a sound that he described to me as sounding like the raptor coughing in the kitchen from Jurassic Park. Gary Rydstrom, the man who created the raptor sound for the movie, got the sound from his neighbor's dog that had been surgically debarked. The witness was concerned as he had never heard that sound in the wild before. Shortly after that, there was another whistle. More silence. Then he realized something was throwing what seemed to be a golf ball-sized rock towards him. Suddenly, he hears a very loud tree knock. It was so close and loud that the witness thought one of the trees in his hammock was attached to had broken. He compares the sound as loud as a gunshot. At the time, he felt incredibly threatened, packed up and left the area. While leaving, he smelt a skunky odor, and like so many other witnesses, describes or felt as if he was being watched as he left. The witness was so intimidated by the encounter, he decided to travel by bus for the remainder of his journey. He wanted me to know that he was backpacked many times throughout his life and never experienced a night such as this. Investigator Marion Gant and I actually inspected the area 2 days after the encounter took place. We did find evidence of 2 Sasquatches. However, not all found evidence discovered will be shared. The area is surrounded by miles of forest. A power line easement is very close. It is thought that the Sasquatches might make use of the clearing of the easements to travel along. Several prints and 2 sizes were found. There were also several tracks of prints, morning or evening. We saw huge supplies of other food sources for Sasquatch too. We did not find any rocks in the area that could have been thrown, but found several large apple snail shells that were possibly thrown at the witness. Behind where the witness's hammock was is a huge big boy trail. This is a game trail that is much taller than what a normal game trail is. When something as tall as a squatch walks through the woods, the branches and trees are bare and broken up high to accommodate them. Marion and I agree that the witness was preventing one or both of these Sasquatches from traversing to the other side of the bridge, thus leading to the acts of aggression he